Whenever I get the chance, I love to watch Judge Judy. I love the way that she catches people in a lie, that gotcha moment where she's able to get people to unwittingly admit the truth. One of my favorite episodes was the case where a biker had run into a car that was pulling out of an intersection. The driver claimed that she never noticed the biker because he wasn't in the bike lane like he was supposed to be, but was actually in the travel lane. Judge Judy pounced all over her comment saying, "Ma'am, the only way you could know that he wasn't in the bike lane is because you saw him coming." The woman eventually admitted that she did see the biker coming and then changed her whole defense, claiming that he was just going too fast for her to avoid hitting him. The opponents of the early church never deny the empty tomb. Instead, they go on to explain it as the disciples stealing the body of Jesus. They admit that the tomb is empty. They just try to explain it differently. Of course, their explanation makes no sense. Why would these disciples then go on to suffer persecution and die for what they knew to be a lie? Virtually no scholar today thinks that the disciples of Jesus were trying to pull off some hoax by stealing his body. But there are a number of scholars who challenge the story of the empty tomb. They claim that it's a later legend created by the church after the first generation of disciples and eyewitnesses, both pro and con, had all since died. And that way, the opponents of the early church had no ability to challenge the claim of the empty tomb. It would be too late for them to go back and produce Jesus' dead corpse. It would be too late for them to go back and locate the tomb, or if they could locate the tomb, to identify the body as Jesus's, because it would have decomposed at that point, or even to produce witnesses, eyewitnesses, who could show that Jesus' body was never buried in a tomb in the first place, like many people who were crucified back then, that his body was somehow placed in a common burial grave or a shallow grave instead. In other words, the early opponents of the church never deny the empty tomb, because when that claim is first made, it's too late for them to go back and challenge it, to disprove it. But here's the thing. If the claim about the empty tomb wasn't made right away, right after the death of Jesus, when the opponents of the early church and anybody else who wanted to could go check it out, it's completely pointless. It doesn't prove a thing. Those second and third generation, Christian generation opponents of the early church, if the claim was being made late, all they would have to do is say, wow, that's the first we're hearing of this claim about the empty tomb, this story about the empty tomb. How convenient for you, now that nobody can go back and verify whether it's true or not. It's too late for us to go back and disprove it. If they just said that, they would render the empty tomb story completely meaningless. Everybody would know that it's being told for the first time, too late for the opponents to disprove it. But they never say that. They never make the claim that the empty tomb story is a late story that they have no ability to disprove, that which would have been the easiest way to dismiss it. Instead, they admit that the tomb is empty. They admit that everybody knows the tomb is empty. And that's why they have to seek some other way to explain why it's empty, namely that the disciples stole the body. So like a defendant on Judge Judy, they tacitly admit that the claim about the empty tomb is an early claim that they had no way to disprove because it was true. In other words, they unwittingly give us solid evidence that the tomb of Jesus was indeed empty shortly after his death. And if there was an empty tomb, that's objective verification that the disciples weren't suffering some kind of mental delusion when they claimed that Jesus appeared to them risen from the dead. The tomb is empty because Jesus is risen from the dead. The tomb is empty because he's alive. The tomb is empty because he's conquered death. So what do you think about the empty tomb? Do you think that the tomb of Jesus actually was empty shortly after his death? And if it was, do you think that provides any kind of evidence for the resurrection? I'd love to hear your comments. You can go to the Raising Jesus website, the Contact EJ page, and leave them there. Also, if you haven't had a chance to yet, please like our Facebook page and subscribe to our YouTube channel, and keep telling your friends about us. I truly appreciate all the support all of you have been giving me. It means so much. Thank you.